one of the songs I get the most requests for, and we don't really do it in the band, is this next one. I'll tell you a little background on this song. I went to Beaumont one time to visit my parents and give them the bad news that I was going to definitely become a professional musician. This shouldn't have come as a surprise to them because I was about 40 years old. And I told them the train was leaving the station and they needed to get on it or get off of it. And they were pretty supportive, but when I was driving back from Beaumont to Houston, I started thinking about the fact that telling your parents you want to be a musician the rest of your life is kind of like bringing home a girl from the wrong side of the tracks and telling them you're going to get married. So this is a song about that girl. We met when we were young. That's when you touched me for the first time with your beauty and the way you made me feel. We went to school together. We sang in church together. And when I was with you, I knew love was real. But then when we grew up, they told me you were wrong for me. Your way of life was just so different from our own. So I turned my back on you and left to find my fortune, giving you a phase that I'd outgrown. But I never quite gave up on us. I dreamed about you often, and I planned that I'd come back to you someday. As years have passed, I've realized you were all that mattered. I'm so glad you touched me in your special way. For you are the music. You are the music of the blues, the country, gospel, rock and roll. And you are the music. Always been my music. The music that's in my very soul. Our lives will be so empty without hope and inspiration, just to get us through the hard times that come round. Gave me such a dream of greatness, power and the glory. Your inspiration never let me down. And so I came back here today to see if I could find you. I had no way to know, it's been so long. I never should have doubted that you'd always be there for me, 'cause I found you waiting here inside this song. You are the music. You are the music of the blues, the country, gospel, rock and roll. And you are the music. You'll always be my music. You're the music that's in my very soul. You are the music. You are the music. You're the blues, the country, gospel, rock and roll. And you are the music. You'll always be my music. The music that's in my very soul. One of the things I was lucky enough to be able to do when I first started playing in bands was to get to play with Lightnin Hopkins. Probably the greatest blues band to ever come out of Houston. The world loves Lightnin Hopkins, and Houston barely knows who he is. I still remember the last time I got to play with Lightnin Hopkins, because we had a heckler in the audience. He wasn't really a heckler. He's just he was a guy that wanted to hear this one particular song about Mr. Charlie. So all night long we were playing there, and this one guy in the audience kept yelling out, "Mr. Charlie, Mr. Charlie." And Lightnin, I guess he really didn't like people yelling at him, so he just refused to play the song all night long. We were playing at a club in Houston called Liberty Hall, and every time they hired Lightnin, they'd bring in a bunch of us other guys to play with him. So the last night we were playing there, we came down the other night, and he decided to introduce the band to the audience. Now this was kind of a strange thing for him to decide to do, because he didn't know any of our names. Actually, he knew this one guy. Rex was the guy that picked him up and drove him over to the gig and set up his guitar for him. And we said, "Well, I want to introduce my band players to you. Over here on the bass, we got Mr. Rick. We got Rex." And everybody gave Rex a big hand. And then Lightnin looked around at the rest of us, and he knew we had a problem. But the guy playing harmonica, Tommy Dardar, was standing right behind him. When he looked up at him and said, I want to introduce you to my harp blower now, my harmonica man. And Tommy leaned down and said, "It's Tommy." And so he said, "We got Tommy on the harmonica." Now Lightnin got a big smile on his face at this point because he knew he had a plan. Because he'd just look at one of us, and Tommy'd lean down and whisper in his ear who his name was. He'd turn around and said, "On the drums you got," and he'd say, that's Roberto on the drums. He said, "We got Roberto on the drums." I thought it was kind of strange he didn't know Roberto's name, because he was the guy that owned the club and was going to pay him at the end of the night. And finally, he'd introduced everybody except me, and I was sitting on the other side of a big grand piano from him, and he looked over at me, and Tommy leaned down, and he said, that's Charlie on the piano. And Lightnin said, we got Mr. Charlie on the piano, Mr. Charlie. On that note, he was inspired to do the song. Now this is a song about a little boy that stuttered. He stuttered so bad everybody made fun of him. He had to leave town. He wandered all over East Texas looking for a place to live. One day he came into a little town where they had a big sawmill. They called it the rolling mill. They found out the rolling mill belonged to one Mr. Charlie. So he went around and he finally found Mr. Charlie and went up to him and said, "Mr. Charlie?" And Mr. Charlie looked down and said, "What you want with me, boy?" And the little boy said, "I want to work." And Mr. Charlie said, well, you're too little to work, boy. Just get on out of here." The little boy turned around and he walked off crying. And Mr. Charlie felt sorry for him. He said, "Come back here, boy." He says, "You know, there's something you can do for me here." He said, "Now, I've got a little shack out behind a rolling mill." And he said, "You can live in that shack for as long as you want to. You just got to do one thing for me. And that's you got to keep an eye on the rolling mill. Because if that rolling mill ever catch on fire, I want you to come run up to my house and tell me about it." So the little boy moved into that shack, and he was tickled to death to have a place to live. Now one Sunday morning, the little boy woke up, and he looked out the window, and sure enough, the rolling mill had caught on fire. So he went running up the lane to Mr. Charlie's house. He found Mr. Charlie out in the backyard working on his rose bushes. He came running up to Mr. Charlie, started pulling on his pants leg, going, Mama, Mr. Charlie, Mr. Charlie. And Mr. Charlie said, "What you bothering me about now, boy? Can't you see I'm busy?" Well, the little boy was just so excited he couldn't say anything. He just kept pulling on him, going, Mr. Charlie, Mr. Charlie. Finally, Mr. Charlie said, "Boy, if if you can't say what you're trying to tell me, why don't you just sing it? The little boy went, whoa, Mr. Charlie, your rolling mill is burning down. Yeah, and he said, whoa, Mr. Charlie, your rolling mill is burning down. And Mr. Charlie said, well, we ain't got no water, boy. Just have to let that old mill burn down to the ground. And the boy's going, whoa, Mr. Charlie, I won't have no place to stay. Yeah, and he said, whoa, Mr. Charlie, I won't have no place to stay. And Mr. Charlie said, why, you can live right here with me, boy, long as there is a day. The little boy walked off and he was still crying and going, whoa, Mr. Charlie, your rolling mill is burning down. Said, whoa, Mr. Charlie, your rolling mill is burning down. And Mr. Charlie said, well, we ain't got no water, boy. Just have to let that old mill burn to the ground.